Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick minute and talk about my birth story. For those of you who followed me at all on Facebook, I was constantly, or it felt like, I was constantly having false alarms. And I would think that I was going into labor, and I would say to my husband, I think this is it. And we'd wait, and then it wouldn't happen. And I'd say, I think this is it. And I'd say, maybe you need to load the bag in the car. He'd say, let's just wait. And then it would fade away. So, it was Sunday, March 30th, and I woke up, and normally we'd go to church, but I just didn't feel like that was the best option. I was tired. I didn't feel great. So we weren't scheduled on any ministries that day. So we we decided to play hooky, and we slept in a little bit. And after lunch, I said to my husband, you know what? I just feel antsy. Let's go for a walk. So we grabbed some Starbucks and we headed to the mall, and we walked and we walked and we walked and we walked. And then I was starting to get really tired, and I said to my husband, "Oh, I'm exhausted, but we need to grab some stuff for supper." So we headed to Walmart. I bought a gluten-free pizza mix, some pepperoni, and some cheese, and decided I was going to make gluten-free pizza. So we got home, and it wasn't really supper time. So I said, "I'm going to lay down just for an hour." Well, I laid down for a little longer than an hour, and only woke up when I started getting cramping. And it was the kind of cramping that you would get with food poisoning, or when you've got a little bit of a stomach flu and so you feel kind of crampy, like maybe, something's just not agreeing with your belly. So, and it seemed fairly regular. So I got up and I went out and I said to my husband, I'm having some pretty regular cramping. I think this is it. And he kind of started to chuckle and he said, honey, you've been saying that every day now for a couple of weeks. So he said, I don't know. He said, why don't you get a drink and rest? And I said, I can't rest. I just feel antsy. So I grab a glass of water and I start walking and pacing the halls. And the cramping starts getting a little more intense, and it's still there. And before long, I'm like, okay, this is more than just cramps. I couldn't even make the pizza dough, so I said to my husband, I'm not making supper. You're gonna have to go out and get something. I just can't. I can't keep going. So I walked and walked and kept hydrated, and the cramping quickly turned to contractions. And the contractions picked up fairly quickly till they were about 5 minutes apart. And so we called the midwife and they said, hey, listen, they're 5 minutes apart. They're lasting anywhere from 45 seconds to a minute. And, what do you want us to do? And she said, hang tight, stay at home, keep hydrated, get some rest if you can. And I think it's a little early. Wait till you're 2 to 3 and then go in. So so that's what we did. My husband went and grabbed some stuff at the grocery store to have for supper, and a can of cashews in case this was it, and he'd have some protein to munch on. And I really began to feel like this was it. So we called my parents and said, listen, because they were keeping our son. I said, listen, stay on tap. We think this is it. We'll call you when we're going in. So I got everything gathered up, started getting things gathered up. I had packed a bag of food for my husband for during labor and drinks for myself. And of course, our clothes and my son's clothes, and then threw in the last few minute things like toothbrushes and toothpaste and that sort of thing. So my husband went to bed because he felt like he probably was going to need some rest. And so he went to bed, and I tried to rest, but I couldn't really. So I just labored. I moaned, I rocked, I swayed, I sang. I kept hydrated. I walked. I would get into different positions as it felt comfortable, and really tried to labor as long as I could on my own and let my husband sleep. But it got to the point where they were definitely, 2 to 3 minutes apart. They were lasting a minute, minute and a half. somewhere as long as a minute 45, and I was not really able to talk to them, and I was actually moaning a lot more, and my voice changed, and I knew that this was probably the beginning of something. So I got my husband, we called my parents, we gathered everybody up, dropped my son off, and headed to the hospital. And I was joking with my mother that if I get there and they say I'm only 3 centimeters, I'm going to be so upset. And sure enough, I got to the birth center, and they said you're only 3 centimeters apart, and or you're only 3 centimeters, and I was absolutely devastated. And she said, "Don't worry, you're a second time mom, so chances are you're gonna go fast." So she got me checked in, checked fetal heart tones, hooked me up to the monitor, got my vitals, and got some initial data recorded. And I had to call in some more staff because they weren't expecting to have me there in labor. So they called a nurse who actually was also a trained doula. And that was really awesome because we had had a doula with our first birth and really, really loved her, but didn't have the financial resources this time to hire a doula. So the fact that our RN was also a doula was amazing, and she was fantastic. So I labored through the night. My husband wasn't feeling well. He had eaten wheat, and being gluten free, that wasn't agreeing with him. So he tried to sleep it off on the cot that they have for dads, and I was in the shower most of the night or in the bed on all fours with the edge of the bed dropped down for a modified all fours. And it was quickly determined that baby was OP, which means he was flipped in the back, and so that's why I was having such bad back labor. And that makes it really hard for baby to descend properly into the birth canal. So I knew from experience, both as a nurse and having an OP baby the first time, that I was in for a pretty long night and a pretty hard night as well. Labored. Just before shift change, I was in the shower, or just at shift change, I guess. I was in the shower. I was meeting the new RN that was coming on that shift, and something really started to happen, and I felt an extreme amount of pain and pressure and a gush of fluid, um, poured onto the shower floor, and I let out this mama lion scream, and I mean, nurses came in from everywhere and, huddled me onto the bed, and, before long we had a physician coming in that was off service, wasn't from our team, and she was checking me, and she said, he's trying to push down and he's going faster than your cervix is dilating, so we need to get that cervix thinned out, and we need him to kind of move at a more regulated pace. So she repositioned me and called my midwife, and my midwife said, I'm on my way. I'll get there as soon as I can. And she arrived, and I felt like it was like I was in a scene from A Birth Story by Ina May Gaskin, and I started having a lot of fear, and I said, Sue, I'm scared, and I was panicking, and she said, you can do this. She said, you need to listen to me, you need to relax, you need to have confidence in yourself. And as she's giving me this pep talk, and she's rubbing my legs, and she's saying, you can do this, I can tell that I've dilated and that the baby is pushed down, and I'm feeling pressure. And I said, Sue, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. And she said, okay, let me check you. And I said, no, Sue, I'm pushing. And I pushed, and 4 pushes later, um, little baby Eli was born, 8 pounds, 1 ounce, and I couldn't have been happier. I couldn't have been prouder. Um, they waited for the cord to stop pulsating, lifted him onto my chest, but allowed the cord to completely stop pulsating before the cord was cut, and waited for the placenta to deliver. I've got a little squirmy baby here. If you see me keep looking down. And the placenta wasn't coming, and it wasn't delivering. And so Sue did what they call, controlled cord traction, where they gently tug on the cord to try to encourage the placenta to come, and it didn't. And she was looking concerned, and I could tell that something was wrong. And she said, we need to call the attending OB, and she needs to get here as soon as she can. And the phone call was placed, and the nurses started getting busy, and IVs were started, and drugs were put on board, and before long the placenta was delivered, and along with a large amount of blood. And they're estimating my blood loss to be about 1,500 cc's, and that's a lot of blood. That's a lot of blood if you don't know blood loss, but that's a lot. And we just kind of got nervous, and my husband had gone to grab a shower after all of the ordeal, and I had another midwife come in and say, listen, you know, this isn't looking good, and the OB wants to come in and see you. And she came in, and I had some emergency tests and some scans done, and they said, you're going to need to go back for surgery. And I was devastated. I was alone. My husband was at home taking a nap and getting a shower. So I called him. He came, and they decided that they could manually remove the clots and some of the leftover pieces, and but that I was going to need a blood transfusion. And I readily agreed, um, because I knew working as a nurse that a blood transfusion can be the difference between life and death for a hemorrhaging mom. So I readily said yes, signed the consent, and they they hooked up the blood. They got the blood running, and that ran through the night. And they were going to recheck my levels in the morning. And meanwhile, baby started to show some signs of respiratory distress, so they took him to the NICU. And there I was, hooked up to, 2 units of blood, my baby in the NICU, my husband sick and in the bed, you know, across from me, like the cot that they have for dads. And I was like, this is not what I had planned. This is not what I had hoped for. And it was a really tough experience. And yet, um, in the end, mom and baby turned out to be okay. Dad recovered from his wheat poisoning, and we brought home a healthy baby boy, and we've loved him from day one. And I often say to people, I had a home birth in the hospital, and my birth plan was followed to a T, and well, in the end, we had some unexpected outcomes. I had a team that was very competent and confident and moved quickly, and we had resources at our disposal, and it was phenomenal. I had the best of both worlds. I had the low intervention, relaxed, midwifery, midwife assisted birth that I wanted. I had a phenomenal doula RN who was, you know, the best I've ever seen, and yet I had all the access to the emergency services that I needed, and I really thank God for the outcome, and the knowledge and the skill of my care team. And so thankful that we have a healthy little boy, and that mommy's recovering well, and we're 6 weeks out, and quite frankly we're starting to get into a little bit of a routine, and he's sleeping a little bit, and it's really really it's been really really awesome, tiring but really great. So that's our birth story, and I'd love to hear any comments or questions that you have. And if you want to share a little bit about your birth story, comment below, or send me a video, and I'd love to hear about your birth story. Thanks for watching.